Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. I am here to continue my journey into 1841 parallel time with episode 1208. Funny thing, when you're watching this episode, it's on Tubi. It is episode 1208. It actually connects to episode 1207. But during the course, you'll see it change to episode 1209. But this is episode 1208. The open narration is done by David Selby, and this this picks up right where it left off. You see Kendrick Young and Gerard Stiles digging up a grave, buried on a grave that was dug on the grounds of Collinsport, or Collinwood, I should say, on the estate itself. So Gerard Stiles repeats what he says. Let's dig. He also says there's a body. Again, the recaps have always gone with the episode. The, so, and that's something you see throughout Dark Shadows, which is really good. Um, so they dig, and well, poor Stella. Of course, they're gonna find Stella's body. Now, Gerard used his psychic ability to find Stella Young. Kendrick and Gerard find Stella's body, and Kendrick here, who, who could have done this? I ask you, who? And then it cuts right to Mel. Oh my god, poor Melanie. It's like the girl tried to stab Catherine. I'm trying to leave you guys in suspense for the whole Stella Young thing, but I'll say this: that I really enjoy Nancy Barrett's portrayal as Melanie. Here's this woman who's now possessed. And now, for those who aren't familiar with Dark Shadows or this arc, keep in mind Justin Collins had spells like of attacks because he stayed in the room. And when you stay in this room after drawing the lottery from the lottery, remember you draw the slip with the X. So Justin drew the unlucky slip, and he now there are two rules. If you have to live and you have to be totally sane. You have to be totally sane. Um, Justin Collins was not totally sane, and he tried to kill or stab Stella. So Flora and and Julia Collins hide her in the tower room. They lie to Stella's brother Kendrick. They don't tell Quentin. They don't tell Gabriel. They don't tell Morgan. So the three sons are left out of the loop. And I gotta tell you, that there is just like, we know the men can hold secrets, but these women are something else. Um, and really, you got Morgan's sort of tirade an episode or two ago. Like, how could you not tell me? Like, did Gabriel know? Did Quentin know? And she she shakes her head, and I'm talking about Flora. But so in this episode, Melanie is talking, and she's talking about their dad, her and Stella, and her and Flora are talking, and Flora they're also talking about her sanity more or less too. So I apologize. They're more talking about her sanity in with the fact of Stella's death, and so because Melanie's adopted, she throws that right in Flora's face. Um, which is really, I'm not your child, and it sort of guts Flora a bit. And Flora does care for her like a daughter, and she says, "You're not crazy. You didn't stab." And she goes, and she realizes what she says. She goes, "I didn't mean to say it that way." And she goes, "Even you think I stabbed Stella." So I'm just gonna go back to something. The writers and Julia, or sorry, Grayson Hall, who plays Julia Collins, does a great job. There's an episode, the episode that Stella gets stabbed. Julia Collins is acting so shady. It's not even funny. I mean, you sort of like, well, did Stella get stabbed by Melanie? So here's Melanie and Flora having this conversation about her sanity, and then there's a knock at the door, and who is it? Well, it's Gerard Stiles and Kendrick Young, and they insist on coming in, or Kendrick insists on coming in. She goes, sure, and she goes, he says to her, I want you to be completely honest with me. Also, he um, Flora asked if Stella, or if no, so, sorry, if Melanie can be excused, and he's like, well, I want to talk to Melanie anyway, and Melanie, she stays, and this is where Kendrick Kendrick says, I found my sister's body. She's dead. And could you here's the thing. Flora, instead of selling the shocked face, she just says, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Young. It's just like, wait a second. You're not even going to sell the shock? I think at this point, Flora's just like, fuck it. I've got too many things going on to worry about selling whether someone's dead or not. Oh my god, it's so beautiful too. It's a funny scene to me because it's like she's just like, oh, I'm sorry, miss. Like she's not even like batting an eye or like shocked at the news. Nothing, because she knows. But Melanie, she goes to pieces here. She starts crying. Kendrick, I like how Kendrick's trying to talk to her, and she's still bawling, and she just leaves the room. She just walks away for a moment. She doesn't leave the room, sorry, and she's still crying. And finally, Kendrick and Gerard leave, and they shut the drawing room doors. And I love Flora here. She just goes, "Don't you say one word." Because they might be listening on the other side of the drawing room doors after leaving instead of leaving the house. They do leave the house, and finally Melanie loses it. She goes, I can't take it no more. I gotta tell him. She opens the double doors, and there, who's standing there? David Selby's Quentin Collins. Like I've said before, when you hear someone narrate the episode of Dark Shadows, it's a good chance their characters in the episode. So, and that theme continues. And I love Quentin in this all blue. It really brought out the blue in David Selby's eyes. And Flora screaming, "Stop her! Stop her! Let's stop!" And David Selby's Quentin calling, "Stop her from what?" Like he doesn't know what's going on. He said, "Stopping her from confess to murder." And he's like, "What?" And then finally, Quentin gets told about Stella. So again, as I emphasized before, none of the sons knew, and even Quentin's like, "Why didn't you tell me? Like, I could have helped here." Like, because let's face the facts. Every woman wants Quentin in bed. Uh, Listen, I guarantee you, if David Selby's Quentin Collins would have opened that tower room, Stella would have seen him. That they would have been banding in the bedroom, and Stella would have forgot all about her trouble. Oh my god! But probably too. I give it 107.7 chance. It would have happened. I'm using my math skills here today, or lack thereof. But I, I love, again, David Selby's character. This Quentin we've talked about. I've talked about this as has my buddy Patrick McRae. This is the most sympathetic Quentin, and eh, Melanie leaves the room finally, and David Selby's Quentin continues. He goes, "We got to tell we got to tell the truth." And later on, we see Melanie at Stella's open grave. Keep in mind, she was just buried in some dirt, so it wasn't like they put a headstone on her say here lies Stella. So Melanie's visiting Stella's open grave, and who's laying in the bushes watching? Gerard Stiles. And Gerard says, "I could tell you really cared for this girl. Your feelings seem genuine." And he goes, "The police might want to question you about your involvement with her." And that gets Melanie to cry and run away. And Gerard's all smiles, like, 'cause he's like, "Yeah, I know there's something here." Again, James Storm is just so awesome as Gerard Stiles. It's like it's so criminally good. And so Melanie runs back to the house, and this is where you see Quentin, try to read the letter of oh gosh, Brutus Collins's letter, and they don't really, as he's reading it, Melanie, who's now possessed, grabs it out of his hand. She starts laughing. She says about suffering and pain, that he didn't suffer enough. This family will suffer. I mean, she's all about making the Collins suffer. Or at least her alter ego is. We'll say the ghost that is possessing her body. And again, I love how they have her go in and out of these possessions. It is just wild. That's how I'll describe it. It's completely wild. I mean, Melanie is just standing there. She's cutting promos, threatening him. She's just laying the smack, like, "Yeah, you're all gonna suffer." She's laying the smack down. It's like, my God. And finally, I love how when she gets out of it, she all but collapses, and David Selby's Quentin Collins is holding on to her, preventing her from falling. And we then cut back to Kendrick and Gerard, who are in um, Kendrick's room at the inn, and Gerard informs Kendrick the police do not have enough evidence. It's like, wait, they found the body on the ground. They aren't now. They're obviously, we're going to get into the whole Stella thing, but I'll say this, that this episode ends. It's still Friday the 13th when I'm recording this, and before I get into the end of this episode, the fact how they end this episode is like the perfect Friday the 13th vibe. But Kendrick Young asked Gerard Stiles for more help, and Gerard's all too willing to accept. He wants the money. He's all about the Benjamins, baby. And we cut back to the great house. And again, Quentin has been asking all the questions about the great room, about who's possessing Melanie. And ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't get any more Friday the 13th than Dark Shadows, because Dark Shadows had seances, and you best believe no family had more seances than the Collins family. I'll word this right. So, what's Quentin suggest? A goddamn seance. Beautiful. Beautiful. They light the candles, they dim the lights. There's only 3 participants here. You have Flora, Quentin, and Melanie. I like this because you're not having a 4 for a 5th person. You just have 3. Which, by the way, there are times you don't have a lot of people for a seance. For example, the Old House seance that was conducted during the Phoenix Arc. It's Victoria Winters, it's David Collins, and it's Sam Evans, and Dr. Guthrie's supposed to show up, and Dr. Guthrie never does. So all the while, no, and this, sorry, I wasn't trying to jump, but I wanted to use something as an example, another seance. So for this seance, you only have three people, and I mentioned them. Now, they're conducting the seance. David Selby is leading the chants. He's summoning for the ghost, and the ghost does appear and delivers some words that are so creepy and cryptic. It's crazy. This episode, look, I love when Dark Shadows holds seances because there's just something about them. And the way the actors do this is always such a good job. Instead of having, this Quentin be obsessed with the occult, he's more trying to find out about it than just be full on obsessed. And I think there is a key difference between not knowing something and honestly trying to figure it out for yourself and for your family's sake, and as to whether be completely obsessed with it. We've seen obsessed Quentins about with the occult. This one isn't obsessed. He's just looking for honest to goodness answers because he doesn't know them. And so, again, the seance happens. Melanie speaks. This is a great, great scene. You guys got to go. If you watch 1208 for nothing else, watch it for the seance. It is really good. I enjoyed it. These episodes are really good. I give a lot of credit to the writers and actors, obviously, for episode 1208. I know this hasn't been very long. These episodes aren't long, really, and they're easy to review. I will say that what shocked me most here is that they did not have um, Grayson Hall in this episode. I think that if I had to pick a shocking, why weren't who wasn't in this episode? You would think Grayson Hall's character would be in this episode, considering she's at the center of the controversy of the Stella murder herself. It's just Flora. It's okay. It's Joan Bennett, Flora Collins, David Selby, Quentin Collins, Nancy Barrett, Melanie, but no Julia. Which I think that's out of all these episodes so far, this one uh, perplexes me the most because again, you would think you would have Julia in this episode, considering it surrounded not just Melanie, but Stella Young, the finding of the body of Stella Young. So I think that's what I'm most perplexed about. They just didn't have her in this episode for whatever reason. Um, think I covered everything. Yes, I did. Okay, guys, gals, it has been great tonight. I will see you guys, let's see, probably Sunday night for episode 1209. Y'all have a great night.